Oh, absolutely. I think those guys are day in, day out. They definitely earn their money. Yeah. A good second man can make a driller, and a bad one could ruin him, for sure.
Welcome to the Ground Investigation Podcast, a show featuring interviews and insights from leaders in the geotechnical and geo-environmental business world. Join host Michael Taylor as he discusses the ups and downs of running a business in the GI industry, getting geological experts to share their learnings and lessons, as well as their plans for the future, highlighting what they think will improve the ground investigation industry moving forward. Now, here is your host, Michael Taylor.
Welcome to another edition of the Ground Investigation Podcast. Today, our guest is going to be Joyce. He is a geotechnical and geothermal driller. Currently has 5 horses. I've been reading from one of the articles that you posted on LinkedIn, Josh.
Thank you for having me.
More than welcome. I was wondering if you could just kick off by giving us a kind of brief background on yourself.
Yeah, so I'm currently in geothermal, but I started 9 years ago now, September, in window sampling as a second man. And then through the years, I sort of progressed to lead driller there. A company called Top Drill, based in Milton Keynes. And then after a while, I moved on to a company called Marshalls, where they gave me my start in rotary and started experience there. And then doing the geotechnical side of stuff, all over the country, really, so sites to sites. And then 2 years ago, made the change here, the geothermal, doing the geothermal drilling. Before the drilling, though, I never really done anything on construction at all. I sort of bounced between jobs, sort of year to year, never really find anything. Yeah. But sort of the drilling is the one thing sort of stuck. Started at the very bottom and now working my way up. It's something I really enjoy every day, like day to day. Okay. All sort of aspects of it.
Yeah. Okay. Why do you think you were kind of bouncing around before and just didn't find something that you were particularly interested in?
Yeah, so I start a new job and I'd find it really interesting. I'd get stuck in. And then after about sort of 12 months or so, you just get sort of dull the same thing day in, day out. So I've worked in checkouts, Tesco's. I worked at a treatment plant, a timber treatment plant. Yeah. I've done that. Worked powder coating. 2 years I was a HGV mechanic apprenticeship. That's what I did straight out of school. Okay. And that's actually the sort of thing I thought I'd do as a career, but in the end, even that sort of became dull to me. I enjoy mechanics, but to do it as a job, I think became dull for me.
That's it. It's like as an example of cooking. I quite like to cook, but I wouldn't want to be a chef and have to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Drilling's the one that's kind of stuck for you. Drilling's the one that you have a long-term future in.
Yeah, I think it's because even though you're doing this, you're sort of doing the same thing every day. It's not the same thing. You've got different sites, different geologies, different challenges. You're always meeting different people as well. There's always the same people all the time, other than your drilling crew. Like the client changes, the engineers change. Yeah, I think that's really what helps that stick for me.
You're not stuck indoors.
And that as well, working outdoors is for me. I couldn't work in like an office-based job. Wouldn't work for me.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of it myself. When I started in the industry, being out on site worked well. But being in the office the days were long. Even though actually you would do an 8-hour day in the office, you do a 10-hour day on site. A 10-hour day on site would go much quicker and be a lot more enjoyable. So
absolutely,
I'm pretty much the same in regards to that. So why did you decide to enter the drilling industry? Did it just happen? How did that?
It did. It happened through my mother-in-law was working for the company for Top Drill, and she knew they were looking for people. Yeah. At the time, I was looking for a new job. I was working at a timber yard in Silverstone at the time, and I was looking for something else because I wasn't enjoying it. Mm-hmm. I wanted something else that had a bit more progression, really. So I went along, and then 9 years ago, and I'm still at it now.
Sure. Okay. So for the people that doesn't really know much about geothermal drilling industry, I wonder if you could just give them a bit of an insight into that. Sort of what are the key objectives and challenges that you face.
Yeah. So the drilling geothermal for the ground source heat pumps is all about like harnessing the heat that's under the ground to then be able to, with a combination of using that and the heat pumps in your house, you can essentially heat your house and the hot water for a relatively low amount. They're a lot more efficient, like gas boilers, For such, it's like, I think some of them you could put, like, for every 1 kilowatt you put in, you get 4 out, energy-wise. So they're massively energy efficient, so on the green sense of things. Green energy side. All these regulations coming out now about having to put green energy into new building sites. Ground source seems to be the one that they're going towards for its efficiency in this country compared to things like air source. Currently on the project I'm on now, they're doing over 2,000 buildings, each with their own house heat pump sort of thing over the next 10 years. Yeah. And it's a massive, it's becoming it's a growing industry still in this country. I was saying to a guy up in Scotland when I started working in Scotland that this sort of thing will be as common on a building site as like the brick is in a few years' time, as electricians and plumbers, the green energy technicians.
That'd be good to see, wouldn't it? Energy and energy usage is quite a popular topic at the moment. So I was wondering if you could give some sort of specific projects and details, drilling challenges that kind of stand out to you over your period of work and how you overcome them.
Yeah, I mean, starting from when you're working on the smaller rigs, I was specialised in modular on the railway embankments, doing slope failures, embankment failures and stuff. So we were drilling for, obviously you have to get a mobiliser rig onto the side of an already failed embankment. And as lightweight as they try and make them, they're never lightweight. So you try to get all your kit up there and your samples and that back down again. With the rotary, obviously the kit's a lot bigger, but then such as like the geothermal, it's about the depth. Trying to drill over 100 metres, sometimes more than that even. When you effectively drilling blind, you can't see what you're not taking core samples. So it's open hole from top to bottom. That presents challenges. Trying to figure out the best method to get the product in the loop in the ground, the easiest way, the fastest way, and to be able to, obviously without damaging it, and then to get the grout in. In GI, the main things are accesses, because if you're doing houses, so you have to take your kit off of the road, trying to access this very small buildings. They were never designed to get large drilling rigs in. But I think that's part of the job that I love as well. Is always something else you've got to try and figure out, which you then take to the next job. I think highlights for me drilling wise is I had a project in the basement of Buckingham Palace years ago with top drill. Nice. And it was a real thing, driving your van through the front gates, past the armed guards and stuff. That was quite a fun one.
Yeah, I bet they got a few pictures for their website from that one as well.
No, actually, we were too scared to take photos. We thought that we'd get in trouble for taking photos and stuff. So, but I'm sure there are a few tourists that have in the back of their pictures is a top drill van, sort of photo bombing on the way past. But it was an interesting one. Definitely, you do sort of worry about what you can and can't do when you're about. But that was a basement job. And any job in London is always a challenge.
Okay, so you spoke about some railway work there. So how does that setting differ from something which is, I always think is ideal? It's like a farmer's field in the middle of nowhere. You're away from everyone else. There's not that many services. So I was wondering if you could just tell us about that and what kind of unique challenges that they pose as well.
With the railway, it's safety is paramount over everything. There's no messing about. There's no, like I say, in a farmer's field, you don't always have your orange trousers on. You try and get away wearing shorts on a hot day, your t-shirt and that. But on the railway, it just doesn't. There's so many rules, and which for a very good reason. That you can work within a few meters of a 120 mile an hour train, and when one of them go past you, you realise that they're not to be messed with. There's nothing you can do if you mess around. So people get hurt. It is a safety first environment, and I don't think there's a safer place to work. Weirdly, when you work on a train, I'd rather work on that train track next to the train than I did when I did a highways job. I feel safer on the railway than I do on the highways because the trains are on tracks. It's very unlikely it's going to come off. But if you're on the road and someone's driving past not paying attention,
no, that's true, and many people do speed and look at mobiles and have conversations and everything else whilst they're doing it. So
and we've all been.
You just have cones tapering off.
Yeah, we've all been drivers driving through construction site roadworks, getting frustrated. But when you've worked in that environment, you realise why the speed limits are there. Because even at the speed limits they put, the traffic's still moving fast. It still feels fast when you stood there, and you've only got like a bit of tape or some cones in the way.
Okay, so you mentioned a moment ago in relation to sort of drilling blind, maybe go down 100 meters. You don't know what the geology is. What kind of problems can that create, and how do you resolve them?
I think the worst is like, because if you're doing with flush, your mud flush, you get an idea what's coming out. You have cuttings coming out. But when you're drilling at 100 meters, you're not sure where them cuttings have come from. You could go through some gravels and you can miss it. They might not make it out of the ground. They might go through a fracture you got in the ground, or you might miss it in the rest of the cuttings that come out. No, if you have something that could easily collapse back in again when you're drilling, voids, if you hit chalk, your flush disappears. You don't know, unless you are in chalk, but if your flush disappears randomly, you don't know whether you've gone into chalk, whereas then you're not going to get flush back, or you've got a blockage, or you have a problem with the pump itself, sort of thing. There's so many things it could be. You just got to try and figure it out the best way you can.
So would you say it's kind of a different skill set required and just different experience to, drilling that way?
I think so. I think you have to think of a different way. When I came into it, I thought, it's O-lobe and holing. When we used to, if you had that on a GI job, it was almost a day off. Trying to drill 12 meters open hole is easy. Which, when you are doing 12 meters, it is easy. But when you drill much more than that and you're expected to put something in afterwards, that needs to go to the depth. When you're drilling to the depth, you've got to drill and you've got to make sure the end product goes in. There's all sorts of different ways of drilling fluids, casing, drilling techniques to sort of guarantee that you don't. I didn't learn in GI, I learned here, but it's something I could potentially take back to the GI sort of thing, and vice. You can. It's a different sort of skill set, but you can move them between the two very easily.
What's your preference? Is it GI? Is it geothermal drilling? What's your preference and why?
Drilling wise, I think GI is a lot more rewarding in the sense of you got your core sample, you got to have proof of what you've done. Mm-hmm. But if it comes to, because I'm a sucker for a good rig, but if it comes to the rigs, you can't. The geothermals are something else. They're just bigger, faster, stronger than GI rigs. The rig I currently use is 6 meter rods on it, and things like that, self-loading, and the speed it can drill and strip out at is just incredible. Something that you can't do in GI when you have to winch off a meter and a half at a time. But I think that's something for me in both. But the drilling result is definitely the GI side we used to get from it. Especially when they do it for all building, and you come back later on, you can see a project there has been put in the ground, built. It's but geothermal has its fun side. It's like I say, when you get a nice big powerful rigs, and the speed at which you can drill and the kit you've got, there's nothing bigger, and that's a good fun side of it. But
that's fair enough. So you mentioned about getting a core and actually seeing what you have, see what you're there for, see what you've actually produced, and how intact it is, and everything else. And obviously you have to get a certain recovery and and that sort of thing. I suppose it's kind of like getting a clutch fixed on a car compared to a paint job, whereas you can see the paint job and makes you nice and happy with a clutch. It might work better, but you don't see any difference to the actual car itself. So
you don't see the ground source system after it's done. It's in the ground. That's it. But like I say, you might see the end product of what you've done the GI for.
So you were saying you began as a window sample driller. Now you're operating sort of these big, mighty rotary drills. How do you think what's kind of the perception of drillers regarding the skills required for, if you can have it in levels between, say, the window samplers, a CP driller, and rotary drillers? How was that viewed by other drillers in terms of skill set and competency levels?
I think there's definitely, we all have our own perceptions of each other. When you're on the groups, you can see what we all think, and it's like a bit of like playground fun, or the pub sort of laughter as it is, like jokes and whatnot. We all I started a window sampling, which you can see as like a sort of entry level into the drilling. And then you're on the road with that, you do see the window samplers as that, sort of young lads, the school toys and things like that, little Tonka toys. And then the CP drillers, I've never operated the CP driller myself, rig myself. I've seen it from afar, and I have a certain respect for the guys, because it is something else that I do think it definitely takes a certain type to be able to do that sort of job. Everything's gone ridiculous weight-wise, and, it's brilliant. And then us rotary drillers are probably just perceived as lever pullers. The rig does everything for us. Just pull a few levers and it's done. I don't think there's any sort of bad blood in it all. It's just how we all see it. Like I say, just competition-wise, same, different between two people between football and rugby. I think even within the drilling, the rotary, there's a difference between the geothermal and the GI. Everyone trying to say their job's harder.
Yeah.
But it's a good laugh, but we all see each other different ways.
Yeah,
Window samples is a good sort of entry level to it all.
I see what you mean. It's in terms of between GI and water well drilling, or, what is it you do essentially? Whereas some people kind of see it as whole bash, and some people see it as it's more complex. I mean, I've never really been around those sorts of rigs and those sorts of projects. I've only ever been on ground investigation projects. But yeah, there are definitely those who consider it more just whole bashing, and I suppose they're right in some ways.
Well, yeah, it is. Like I said, it's just open holing, which is the sort of basic form of GI. It's just the depths you have to go to, and also the time spans you have to work within. You don't have days and days and days to do a loop. You need to try and get in within a day. Really, most things now, you're trying to get one in a day.
Yeah.
Even to depths up to like 200 meters in most geologies.
Really? So is that much?
Yeah, it all depends. It does. Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, you know yourself that you can do everything the right way. It doesn't go in. There could be a collapse at 150 meters. You don't know that. You can't control that. So, but you still doubt yourself about it. You still beat yourself up about it. But then when you get the technique in, and then you realise sometimes it does take a redraw, you're fine. If you get 2 or 3 in a week, but in that first few times you try, that's when you start sort of stressing about it.
So if you were to drill a 200 meter borehole, and there was a kind of partial collapse at 150 meters, how do you resolve that? Do you just go back down? Do you just how do you figure that one out?
Yeah, the first go-to is just a re-drill. Might be unlucky. Most times you just do a re-drill and it'll go through. I mean, after that, if it just continues to be the same place, you have to look at then obviously trying to get more casing in, which could be required different rigs, completely different methods of drilling on site with the same rig.
Borehole for that, how far would you actually case down to? Or does it matter depending on the geology?
It depends on the geology. I've done projects in Leighton Buzzard where we were doing 200 meters, and I was just pushing in 1.5 meters of casing dry in the top with the rig, and then drilling 200 meters, open hole, back out, put a loop in, and just pulling that one like the casing out. Same the project I'm on here, it's just 3 meters of casing pushed in, and then, like I said, depending on the geology. But we had a project down in London, it was 240 meters using a different rig, a duplex rig. And they were putting in 80 meters of casing. So, like I say, it depends on geology. I mean, I try and use the rig I have to sort of pre-drill and put the casing in, so I try not to use more casing than I have to. Because an extra strain on myself, especially the second man, having to take the casing on, like 6-inch casing, on and off.
Yeah, it's nothing short of hard work, is there, especially to kind of be a drilling assistant.
Oh, absolutely. I think those guys are day in, day out, they definitely earn their money. Yeah. A good second man can make a driller, and a bad one could ruin him, for sure.
So I was wondering if you could describe kind of one of the geothermal loop installation detail.
So start to finish, we dig an inspection pit, which then gets widened out to make room for our mud recycling guzzler. Mm-hmm. Drill the depth required. I mean, there's a lot of times they do a TRT test. They'll come and do one hole deeper than they think they're going to need it. And then they can work out from there where the rest have to be at. So you drill to your depth, and then we put the loop in, which is just 2 40mm UPVC pipes with the U-bend at the bottom. It's like a flow and a return. To the bottom of that loop, before we put it in, we shackle weights. They're 40 kilo weights, and how many you put on depends on the depth. So if you do 100 meters, you put one weight on just to pull it down, just to counteract the buoyancy. The loops are also filled with water before you put them in as well to help. But once that loop's in, casing's out, and then we have to then use a grout mix, thermal grout mix, to then help transfer the heat from the ground to the loop. That's where my job ends in it, really. We have a different department, then we'll come along and hook them up to the system. It's all trenched out. They're about a metre below the ground, laid out, back to the main manifold, and then that's then hooked up to the house by the house builders.
Okay, so you mentioned about, was it the TRT?
But yeah, it's the thermal residual test, I think, something like that. Yeah, then they'll see what sort of temperatures they get, how good it is, and they can then reduce it, or they'll just keep it at their depth. Because you could do a TRT of 150, and then they decide they only need them to be 100 meters, the rest of them. And there's a lot of places where when more happens, the more the loops get put in, the more people have an idea what it's like around there, the less they'll be, less important they'll be, but they're still done as well on large projects, so they'll come along and test them to make sure everything is as it should be.
Okay, I get that now. So I suppose you've got the different temperatures at different depths, depending on where you are in the country and what geology you're near, and if you're near granite and all the rest of it. So
I was in, I did one in Bristol, and Bristol, they put a fibre optic cable down with the loop as we installed it, and they could tell you within a metre the temperature, and I think at 200 metres it was 17 degrees at that point, but then all the fluid that comes in and back out again averages out, but I mean, down at that depth it was at 17, and they could work up from that.
Surely you can be so accurate.
Yeah, the technology is still coming along. It sort of is catching up faster and faster. It's still relatively new within the industry. We've been going through years now, but as it becomes more and more the norm, there'll be more and more investment in advancements and stuff, and that's how you get more accurate, which in the long run will save money on projects.
Okay. So in terms of, I was reading your CV, which is what I usually do. You know, when I have a guest on for the podcast and have a few things to go over. So you've written out about rig maintenance, which kind of tapers back, I suppose, to your mechanic days. So obviously to keep your rig in good shape, you know, provides it with longevity and performance whilst drilling. So I'm wondering if you could give us maybe kind of 3 tips to keep your rig ship shape.
I think the number one of all is obviously greasing. Grease wherever you can get your hands on, whenever you can get your hands on it. Most failures I've had personally when I've sort of neglected a grease point and I didn't realise was there, or I've just thought I've done it and not. Swivel seals for one, that's a good one. So just make sure everything's greased up, lubricated up, just saves wearing. Seals, pump seals, another one for me. You know, you can sort of think, they'll be right for now, but then what you don't want to do is for it to go when you're at depth and you're already holding back a lot of water pressure. That's when it goes, and that's when it has the problems. And the last one is just the standard checks. You know, you check your water, your oil, your coolant, just the basic things like that. Just try and do that as regularly as you can. Most companies now do have their check sheets they use either online or paper based. Just basic, like just getting a routine. My problem was I had was when I sort of used to rely on the second man to do it, and it's not really such his job. It has to be his job. But then I was always wondering if it had been done. But when I'm now trying to get in more of a routine and doing it myself. So if you do it as a routine, you know, it's never going to get, if you do this on this days, this one's on these days, you know, it then gets into part of your drilling habit. And then it never goes undone, and it's just something that you can always keep an eye on, because it's like the swivel seal. I every so often, I do it in the morning, after the first roll in the morning. I'll do it half through the day, and I'll do it again at night. I try doing it near the end of the day before I finish up, because that's the one that really causes problems. And then, but it's just like I say, just as you look at something, I'll do that, and then get in a routine of doing it every so often, but doing it at the same time. I don't think you can really over grease anything. That's the thing as well, especially like joints. If it's too much grease, it's not going to be a problem. But if you've under greased it, that's when you get wear, and especially on the larger rigs, it causes problems when you're lifting 6 meter rods, or you've got 12 meter masts and things like that. It's just going to cause issues that are going to cause massive problems on site, and you don't want to be trying to get that fixed in the middle of a mud pit.
So, what is the most kind of challenging geological conditions you've ever drilled through, and how did you handle it?
I think it would have been, I was on the Isle of Wight town called Ventnor, and it was heavily, like, really fractured sandstones. The heat was a side of it as well that didn't help. It was one of the hottest days of the year. I remember it was just after COVID, but the ground was so fractured, trying to get a full recovery was just like nigh on impossible. And then you try and send your dip tape down to check the depth, and sometimes it would go off on down a fracture. So you think you'd hit a void, but actually it's just pulling off to the side. It was just annoying more than anything, but it was a real struggle. And it was just, I think eventually all I did with that was I just turned my pump down, use less flush, try to drill it a bit dry, just try and catch more rather than wash it out and let it drop out the bottom. But that was an interesting one for me. I'd never sort of drilled that geology before. The other one is clay. Trying to core clay was always a tough one.
Is that because it's, it shrinks and swells and all the rest of it, depending on what water's in it?
Yeah, it's just because when you're trying to drill it, the water doesn't help. I remember a more experienced driller said to me about trying again the same trick, just trying to turn your pump down to a point where you're almost sort of blocking out your barrel. Try and keep it as dry as possible as you're doing it. And it was fiddly, because I say if you're going that close to the edge, you're gonna cause a problem. But I managed to sort of overcome it, and it really helped out. Because normally clay, you have to dynamic sample it, but when it's sort of too hard for that, and then you got to try and core it, and then trying to make sure it's in the end of your barrel, and then your second man trying to get the catcher out of the end of it is always fun to watch.
So, as far as advice goes, what kind of advice would you give based on your own experience, someone entering into the drilling industry?
Just listen to other people's advice. There was so many like drillers who've been doing this, man and boy as they were. I worked with a guy Ken Lee, who's been doing it for God knows how many years. And he's always got some advice about something. And it was just when you always just listen to him because they've been there. And don't worry about if you make a mistake because you guarantee someone has done it before. You know, you're not the first person to make that mistake. And there's always a way to sort it. And the other one is something I learned actually from my apprenticeship days in the mechanics industry is there's no such thing as a stupid question. You know, if you want to ask something, you ask it. There's only a stupid answer. You know, if someone tries to mock you for asking a question, then it's a problem on them. They shouldn't. You know, if you've got a question, you should ask it because you want to know something, and you shouldn't then wait. You want to learn something, you learn. Every day is a learning day. But also, even as you get on, sometimes the new lads coming into the industry can teach you stuff. You know, you could do the same thing, same day in, day out, and then someone will come along and ask you why you're not doing another way, and you realise that way is actually easier. But you've never thought of it before. Sometimes a fresh input really helps.
Yeah, that's some valid points. You can learn from the experienced one, but also a fresh pair of eyes, a fresh idea can also be the saving grace. In terms of you joining the industry, what do you wish you knew before you joined the drilling industry?
I think the biggest shock was the staying away, how much it'd be.
Yeah.
You know, I've been doing this for 9 years now. I could probably add up to about 8 years that I've been away from home.
I noticed that, looking through your LinkedIn profile, that you've got some articles that you've on there. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't really know why I started writing. It started, the writing thing for me was when I started writing a novel for my youngest, my eldest. And I actually found like I really enjoyed it. Then I wanted to try and write some stuff. I try and think that maybe I'm not the only one that thinks about certain things about work. We'll go through it and we think, oh, we're the only ones struggling with this. And years ago, I wrote a few sort of blog posts when I was trying to get into it. And then I tried again with why the expletive and my driller. And I started writing that one when I was sat in the Costa at a hospital waiting to pick my nan up. She's after some check. And I thought I'd give it a go, I had some time to kill. And I started writing it. And it sat there then for a good few months before I finished it. And that's when I brought the ADHD sort of thing into it. And then I just posted it. I thought I'd post it and then, I see what come of it. And it's sort of got a good reaction. And then that made me think that maybe other people do think about this sort of lot. The trials of our industry. The ADHD thing, the just general, just sort of adult life as well. We all struggle, but none of us ever really, I don't think we talk enough about it. It's still very much a thing that no one talks about. And for me, I can put about the last one I put up. It's sort of like a self-therapy thing. I write it out, and then I just put it out to the world, and then someone else might read it, and they think the same and agree. And if one person thinks, oh, maybe I'm not the only one that thinks that way. And it is how I think. I feel that sometimes it's too much information going on. And I do feel swamped. But for I also write when it's pen to paper. I mean, I write journal, I write in and stuff. I also do my book that I'm writing, I handwrite it first because that for me is quite calming, especially after a stressful day. Just sit around doing that.
I've read all of them. Your most recent one in relation to devices, mobile phones, whether it's the feedback from the instrument panel on in your van or on the rig or everything like that, in terms of you're not having a smartwatch anymore because you're just getting kind of pointless emails that disturb you. It's kind of a waste of time. So we are kind of an overstimulated generation now. That's kind of where we are. They're really good. You've got a knack for writing, and it's good to help center you, calm you down, and it allows you to kind of focus on one thing and kind of let the day's issues and life's problems be put away for a little while whilst you kind of concentrate on that. So you said you're going to be writing a book. You're starting to write a book now. Could you just tell us a little bit about what kind of book you're writing? Yeah. If you're planning on publishing it, just a little bit about it.
Yeah, my favourite genre to read is the Lord of the Rings. You've got Raymond E. Feist, Brandon Sanderson, that sort of stuff. So I thought I'd write one that I could sort of share with my oldest lad, and even now my daughter's getting into it now. She loves that sort of stuff. But I thought I want to sort of write my own. It is a form of escapism type thing when I get to write it, where you can sort of try and do what. I'm hoping that in the future I'm looking at it be self-publishing. There's so many options these days online, doing it that way. I've got plans for other stories, not just the one other story. It'd be nice something I can sort of do, just even on the side. I don't know, as a full-time job, just something I can sort of do here and there. Just sort of get the story out. Even if one person enjoys it, it's still nice. It's still good for me. So I sort of want to do.
Sure. Yeah, I suppose it's kind of part of the process, and sort of engaging with that is beneficial for yourself. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to sell loads. It'd always be nice to do so, of course. But I don't suppose that's the the real reason for you're doing it.
It's something that I enjoy doing, and if I can get something out of it in the end, it bones.
Yeah. Okay, well, that pretty much brings us to the end of the podcast, Josh. Thank you very much for spending the time. And
Stuff we've been under, even with it alongside the technical issues, we've persevered, got through.
There's been a few, but so I mean, if anyone wants to read your articles, then feel free to go on Josh Joyce's LinkedIn account, and you'll find them all there. So you've got a few. So you've got one is The Journey Begins, First Person Not the Last, and that's part of the same thing. Why the Expletive for My Driller, which is really good, and the Information Rehab. Looking at it now, it's good. Your writing's good, and you kind of drawing in. So one of my favorite things is the battery also has a form of electric narcolepsy, which kind of tapers into what's happened this evening when we're kind of recording this podcast and your computer malfunctioned and died. But your writing is good. You've got a talent in terms of your writing and your creativity. But thanks very much for your time.
No worries, thank you, Michael, and have a good evening.
You too, Josh.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ground Investigation Podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, then please support the show by leaving it a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. For more information on what was discussed in this episode, click the link in the show notes now.